Right now, this is just a job. If I advance any higher in this company, then this would be my career. Well, if this were my career, I'd have to throw myself in front of a train.
In times such as ours, there is a great pressure to come up with concepts that help men understand their dilemma. There is an urge toward vital ideas, toward a simplification of needless intellectual complexity. One such vital truth that has long been known is the idea of heroism. As William James once remarked, quote, "Mankind's common instinct for reality has always held the world to be essentially a theater for heroism," end quote. Philosophers of all ages, and in our culture especially Nietzsche, knew and reminded us that our central calling, our main task on this planet is the heroic. The crisis of modern society is precisely that the youth no longer feel heroic in the plan for action that their culture has set up. They don't believe it is empirically true to the problems of their lives and times. We're living a crisis of heroism that reaches into every aspect of our social life. The dropouts of university heroism, of business and career heroism, of political action heroism, and the rise of anti-heroes. In our times, the disillusioned creative person is driven harder than ever to strive for personal heroism, whether through social media, art, or business. While an admirable and romanticized endeavor, it is not an easy fate, for most are doomed to live in constant pressure between duty and self-fulfillment, where one means the death of the other. But the truth about the need for heroism is not easy for anyone to admit, even the very ones who want to have their claims recognized. There's the rub. To become conscious of what one is doing to earn his feeling of heroism is the main self-analytic problem of life. Everything painful and sobering in what psychoanalytic genius have discovered about man revolves around the terror of admitting what one is doing to earn his self-esteem. This is why human heroics is a blind driveness that burns people up. And this is where the dilemma begins to touch us directly. Because if life is, at its core, a theater for heroism, then what does it mean when the roles offered to us are so painfully small? A steady job, a stable career, a respectable title, these are meant to be enough. Yet for many, they feel like a quiet surrender, as though the script itself has betrayed the size of our hunger. And for those who refuse to accept this bargain, who feel the creative curse burning inside them, the path is no easier. To reject the normal role is to step into exile, caught between the unbearable safety of giving up and the unbearable risk of trying to cut out your own path. This is the tension that defines our age. Why does a normal job feel like giving up? To see why this blind striving consumes us, we have to look closer at the root of heroism itself, our narcissism, the endless need to feel that our existence is uniquely justified. One of the key concepts for understanding man's urge to heroism is the idea of narcissism. This idea is one of Freud's great and lasting contributions. Freud discovered that each of us repeats the tragedy of the mythical Greek Narcissus. We are hopelessly absorbed with ourselves. If we care about anyone, it is usually ourselves first of all. As Aristotle somewhere put it, luck is when the guy next to you gets hit with the arrow. It is one of the meaner aspects of narcissism that we feel that practically everyone is expendable except ourselves. We should feel prepared, as Emerson once put it, to recreate the whole world out of ourselves even if no one else existed. Man does not seem able to help his selfishness. It seems to come from his animal nature. Through countless ages of evolution, the organism has had to protect its own integrity. In man, a working level of narcissism is inseparable from self-esteem, from a basic sense of self-worth. We have learned, mostly from Alfred Adler, that what man needs most is to feel secure in his self-esteem. But man is a creature with a name who lives in a world of symbols and dreams and not merely matter. His sense of self-worth is constituted symbolically. His cherished narcissism feeds on symbols, on an abstract idea of his own worth, an idea composed of sounds, words, and images in the air, in the mind, on paper. And this means that man's natural yearning for organismic activity, the pleasures of incorporation and expansion, can be fed limitlessly in the domain of symbols and so into immortality. The single organism can expand into dimensions of worlds and times without moving a physical limb. It can take eternity into itself, even as it gaspingly dies. In childhood, we see the struggle for self-esteem at its least disguised. The child is unashamed about what he needs and wants most. His whole organism shouts the claims of his natural narcissism, especially when there are several children competing at once for the prerogatives of limitless self-extension, what we might call cosmic significance. We like to speak casually about sibling rivalry as though it were some kind of byproduct of growing up, but it expresses the heart of the creature, the desire to stand out, to be the one in creation. When you combine natural narcissism with the basic need for self-esteem, you create a creature who has to feel himself an object of primary value, first in the universe, representing in himself all of life. This is the reason for the daily and usually excruciating struggle with siblings. An animal who gets his feeling of worth symbolically has to minutely compare himself to those around him to make sure he doesn't come off second best. Sibling rivalry is a critical problem that reflects the basic human condition. It is not that children are vicious, selfish, or domineering. It is that they so openly express man's tragic destiny. He must desperately justify himself as an object of primary value in the universe. He must stand out, be a hero, make the biggest possible contribution to the world, show that he counts more than anything or anyone else. And when this desperate drive grows up, it doesn't disappear, it simply changes costumes. The hunger for cosmic specialness is disguised within the structures of society. When we appreciate how natural it is for man to strive to be a hero, then it is all the more curious how ignorant most of us are consciously of what we really want and need. In our culture anyway, the heroic seems too big for us, or we too small for it. We disguise our struggle by piling up figures in a bank book to reflect privately our sense of heroic worth, or by having only a little better home in the neighborhood, a bigger car, brighter children. But underneath throbs the ache of cosmic specialness, no matter how we mask it in the concerns of smaller scope. We may shudder at the crassness of earthly heroism of both Caesar and his imitators, but the fault is not theirs. It is in the way society sets up its hero system and in the people it allows to fill its roles. The urge to heroism is natural and, to admit it, honest. The fact is that this is what society is and always has been. A symbolic action system, a structure of statuses and roles, customs and rules for behavior designed to serve as a vehicle for earthly heroism. Each script is somewhat unique, each culture has a different hero system, but each cultural system is a dramatization of earthly heroics. Each system cuts out roles for performances of various degrees of heroism. It doesn't matter whether the cultural hero system is frankly magical, religious, and primitive, or secular, scientific, and civilized. It is still a mythical hero system in which people serve in order to earn a feeling of primary value, of cosmic specialness, of ultimate usefulness to creation, of unshakable meaning. They earn this feeling by carving out a place in nature, by building an edifice that reflects human value. A temple, a cathedral, a totem pole, a skyscraper, a family that spans 3 generations. The hope and belief is that the things that man creates in society are of lasting worth and meaning, that they outlive or outshine death and decay, that man and his products count. But what happens when the cultural stage itself loses credibility, when the myths that once guaranteed meaning no longer persuade us? People need a beyond, but they reach first for the nearest one. This gives them the fulfillment they need, but at the same time limits and enslaves them. You can look at the whole problem of a human life in this way. You can ask the question, what kind of beyond does this person try to expand in, and how much individuation does he achieve in it? Most people play it safe. They choose the beyond of standard transference objects like parents, the boss, or the leader. They accept the cultural definition of heroism and try to be a good provider or a solid citizen. In this way, they earn their species' immortality as an agent of procreation, or a collective or cultural immortality as part of a social group of some kind. Most people live this way, and I am hardly implying that there is anything false or unheroic about the standard cultural solution to the problems of men. It represents both the truth and the tragedy of man's condition, the problem of the consecration of one's life, the meaning of it, the natural surrender to something larger. These driving needs that inevitably are resolved by what is nearest at hand. Culture opposes nature and transcends it. Culture is in its most intimate intent a heroic denial of creatureliness. But this at-hand denial is more effective in some epochs than in others, as we can see now. When humans lived securely under the canopy of the Judeo-Christian world picture, we were part of a great whole. To put it in our terms, our cosmic heroism was completely mapped out. It was unmistakable. We came from the invisible world into the visible one by the act of God, did our duty to God by living out life with dignity and faith, marrying as a duty, procreating as a duty, offering our whole life to the Father. In turn, we were justified by the Father and rewarded with eternal life in the invisible dimension. Little did it matter that the earth was a vale of tears, of horrid sufferings, of torturous and humiliating daily pettiness, of sickness and death, a place where we felt we did not belong, the wrong place, as Chesterton said, the place where one could expect nothing, achieve nothing for themselves. Little did it matter because it served God and so would serve the servant of God. In a word, our cosmic heroism was assured even if one was as nothing. This is the most remarkable achievement of the Christian world picture, that it could take slaves, cripples, imbeciles, the simple and the mighty and make them all secure heroes simply by taking a step back from the world into another dimension of things, the dimension called heaven. Or we might better say that Christianity took creature consciousness, the thing man most wanted to deny, and made it the very condition for his cosmic heroism. Once we realize what the religious solution did, we can see how modern man edged himself into an impossible situation. He still needed to feel heroic, to know that his life mattered in the scheme of things. He still had to be specially good for something truly special. Also, he still had to merge himself with some higher self-absorbing meaning in trust and in gratitude. If he no longer had God, how was he to do this? This is where the modern creative individual enters, forced to carve out a sense of heroism without the safety net of religion. Personal heroism through individuation is a very daring venture, precisely because it separates the person out of comfortable beyonds. It takes a strength and courage the average man doesn't have and couldn't even understand, as Jung so well points out. The most terrifying burden of the creature is to be isolated, which is what happens in individuation. One separates himself out of the herd. This move exposes the person to the sense of being completely crushed and annihilated because he sticks out so much, has to carry so much in himself. These are the risks when the person begins to fashion consciously and critically his own framework of heroic self-reference. Here is precisely the definition of the artist type, or the creative type generally. The key to the creative type is that he is separated out of the common pool of shared meanings. There is something in his life experience that makes him take in the world as a problem. As a result, he has to make personal sense out of it. This holds true for all creative people to a greater or lesser extent, but it is especially obvious with the artist. Existence becomes a problem that needs an ideal answer, but when you no longer accept the collective solution to the problem of existence, then you must fashion your own. The work of art is, then, the ideal answer of the creative type to the problem of existence as he takes it in. Not only the existence of the external world, but especially his own, who he is as a painfully separate person with nothing shared to lean on. He has to answer to the burden of his extreme individuation, his so painful isolation. He wants to know how to earn immortality as a result of his own unique gifts. His creative work is at the same time the expression of his heroism and the justification of it. It is his private religion, as Otto Rank put it. Its uniqueness gives him personal immortality. It is his own beyond and not that of others. No sooner have we said this than we can see the immense problem that it poses. How can one justify one's own heroism? He would have to be as God. Now we see even further how guilt is inevitable for man. Even as a creator, he is a creature overwhelmed by the creative process itself. If you stick out of nature so much that you yourself have to create your own heroic justification, it is too much. This is how we understand something that seems illogical, that the more you develop as a distinctive, free, and critical human being, the more guilt you have. Your very work accuses you. It makes you feel inferior. What right do you have to play God? Especially if your work is great, absolutely new, and different. You wonder where to get authority for introducing new meanings into the world, the strength to bear it. It all boils down to this: the work of art is the artist's attempt to justify his heroism objectively in the concrete creation. It is the testimonial to his absolute uniqueness and heroic transcendence. But the artist is still a creature, and he can feel it more intensely than anyone else. In other words, he knows that the work is he, therefore bad, ephemeral, potentially meaningless, unless justified from outside himself and outside itself. Whatever he does, he is stuck with himself, can get securely outside and beyond himself. He's also stuck with the work of art itself. Like any material achievement, it is visible, earthly, impermanent. No matter how great it is, it still pales in some ways next to the transcending majesty of nature, and so it is ambiguous, hardly a solid immortality symbol. In his greatest genius, man is still mocked. No wonder that historically art and psychosis have had such an intimate relationship, that the road to creativity passes so close to the madhouse and often detours or ends there. The artist and the madman are trapped by their own fabrications. They wallow in their protests that they really are something special in creation. The whole thing boils down to this paradox. If you're going to be a hero, then you must give a gift. If you're the average man, you give your heroic gift to the society in which you live, and you give the gift that society specifies in advance. If you're an artist, you fashion a peculiarly personal gift, the justification of your own heroic identity, which means that it is always aimed at least partly over the heads of your fellow men. After all, they can't grant the immortality of your personal soul. As Rank argued, there is no way for the artist to be at peace with his work or with the society that accepts it. The artist's gift is always to creation itself, to the ultimate meaning of life, to God. We should not be surprised that Rank was brought to exactly the same conclusion as Kierkegaard, that the only way out of human conflict is full renunciation, to give one's life as a gift to the highest powers. Absolution has to come from the absolute beyond. As Kierkegaard, Rank showed that this rule applied to the strongest, most heroic types. To renounce the world and oneself, to lay the meaning of it to the powers of creation, is the hardest thing for man to achieve, and so it is fitting that this task should fall to the strongest personality type, the one with the largest ego. The great scientific world shaker Newton was the same man who always carried the Bible under his arm. Here Rank joins Kierkegaard in the belief that one should not stop and circumscribe his life with the beyonds that are near at hand or a bit further out or created by oneself. One should reach for the highest beyond of religion. Man should cultivate the passivity of renunciation to the highest powers, no matter how difficult it is. Anything less is less than full development, even if it seems like weakness and compromise to the best thinkers. Nietzsche railed at the Judeo-Christian renunciatory morality, but as Rank said, he overlooked the deep need in the human being for just that kind of morality. Rank goes so far as to say that the need for a truly religious ideology is inherent in human nature and its fulfillment is basic to any kind of social life. Only in this way, says Rank, only by surrendering to the bigness of nature on the highest, least fetishized level can man conquer death. In other words, the true heroic validation of one's life lies beyond sex, beyond the other, beyond the private religion. All these are makeshifts that pull man down or that hem him in, leaving him torn with ambiguity. Man feels inferior precisely when he lacks true inner values in the personality, when he is merely a reflex of something next to him and has no steadying inner gyroscope, no centering in himself. And in order to get such centering, man has to look beyond the Tao, beyond the consolations of others and of the things of this world. Man is a theological being, concludes Rank, and not a biological one. And this is why a normal job can so often feel like giving up. Not because the work itself is meaningless, but because it fails to answer that deeper need for heroic validation. The creative person feels this most acutely, cursed to seek more, yet rarely satisfied with the ready-made beyonds that society offers. In the end, our longing is not simply for comfort or even for success, but for a meaning that stretches beyond ourselves, a meaning vast enough to justify the burden of being alive.